This is Freshly Squeezed True Crime, a Florida-only true crime podcast. I'm Suhaili, and before we get to this week's juicy episode, I ask you to visit the website at fstcpodcast.com, where you'll find all of our social media platforms as well as the newest episodes. And also, find us on YouTube, where we'd like you to follow us, subscribe, share it, do all the things. So, pour yourself a tall glass of orange juice, and let me tell you a story. On the evening of March 24th, 2017, in Ensley, Florida, a community northwest of Pensacola with a population of 23,817, Audreana Zimmerman walked a third of a mile to Terrence Hedrick's house on Leply Road. Terrence heard the faint sounds of a female asking for help. The sounds were coming from the woods. At first, he couldn't see anyone in the dark. However, as if in slow motion, he could make out a silhouette approaching his home. The woman smelled of gasoline and asked for medical assistance. No longer able to withstand the pain, she collapsed on his porch. She smelled of burnt flesh and gas, and it was hard to determine if she had any clothes on. At 9:24 p.m., Fire Chief Hercules Kennard arrived at Mr. Hedrick's home. When Kennard approached Zimmerman, he observed her sitting on the porch, rocking back and forth with her arms straight out. Due to the extensive nature of Zimmerman's burns, Kennard testified that he could not initially identify whether she was wearing clothing. Kennard noticed that Zimmerman's skin was falling off her body, and he believed that over 90% of her body was burned. She had severe head trauma, and her jaw was either broken or severely dislocated. Kennard explained that the extent and severity of the burns prevented him from providing Zimmerman medical assistance. He would later testify that while he generally placed sterile gauze and oxygen on burns, he did not have enough gauze to cover her entire body. He attempted to stabilize her neck, but her skin was charred to such an extent that he could not touch Zimmerman without her skin rubbing off on his gloves. Susie Davis, the EMS supervisor, rode in the ambulance with Zimmerman. Davis told Zimmerman she was going to put her to sleep, and if she wanted to tell her who did it, that she would inform the sheriff. Despite her injuries, Zimmerman was conscious and alert. She identified Tina Brown and Heather Lee as her attackers and told Davis that she was, quote, drugged out of the house, tased, beaten in the head with a crowbar, and then set on fire. She also provided her address, Cypress Shore Mobile Home Park, located at 904 West Detroit Boulevard, Pensacola, Florida 32534, lot number 2. She stated that Tina was on lot number 3 and Heather in lot 1. She asked Davis to protect her children, Trinity Kelly, age 2, and David Zimmerman, age 3. The ambulance arrived within a few minutes and transported Zimmerman to the hospital. Inside the ambulance, Zimmerman repeatedly asked if she was going to recover. She told the paramedic that Brown, Lee, and Brittany Miller poured gasoline on her and set her on fire. She also stated that she, quote, thought they had made up. Zimmerman was taken to Sacred Heart Hospital and then transferred to the Burn Center at the University of South Alabama Hospital in Mobile, Alabama, where she was placed in a medically induced coma. 16 days later, Audreana Zimmerman died on April the 9th, 4 days before her 20th birthday. After Zimmerman was taken to the hospital, deputies located the scene of the attack by walking down the Leply Road address down a dirt trail that followed the gas line. Later that night, deputies accessed the scene from Ashland Avenue, about 1.5 miles from the trailer park on Detroit Boulevard. About 45 feet down the trail, deputies found a pair of white shoes, a Talon stun gun, and a skirt. 40 feet farther was a trail of burnt tissue with blood, a hair weave, a pool of blood, and a crowbar. Further down was more burnt material and a burnt bra. All the items were in plain view. Tina Brown and Heather Lee were located at Heather Lee's trailer shortly afterward and transported to the sheriff's office, where they were informed of their rights and interviewed separately. Deputy Tyree testified that Tina said the whole trailer park fought and argued constantly, and she and Audreana were sometimes on good terms and sometimes not. She and Audreana had made up that day and spent the day watching movies. Zimmerman, Brown, Lee, and Miller had a confusing and turbulent friendship. You see, in the past, Audreana had cut Tina's tires, which Tina reported, had accused Tina of having her boyfriend arrested and calling DCF on her. Tina also said that Audreana and Brittany had gotten into a fist fight, and Audreana had attempted to stun Brittany with a taser. What caused the fistfight? Well, Zimmerman was caught by Miller having sex with Miller's boyfriend. It should also be noted that Zimmerman had a sexual relationship with Heather Lee's husband, and Heather was aware. Audreana was originally from Lubbock, Texas, and had recently moved to Pensacola, Florida with her 2 young children. One can only imagine being 19 with 2 children, in a new place, trying to make friends, and attempting to make changes in her life, stuck in between 2 worlds. 19, wanting to go out, have freedom, and hang out with people her own age. However, no one her age had kids, but being friends with women that were twice her age. Some reported after the crime that her intentions were to move back to Texas. However, I'm sure this was not what her family had in mind, as she was laid to rest at Olton Cemetery in Lamb County, Texas. Tina Brown and Heather Lee were located, detained, and interviewed. Both Lee and Brown denied involvement in the incident, and both gave conflicting testimony as to their activities on the evening in question. Deputy Tyree noticed that Tina's hair weave was similar to the weave found in the scene, and some hair appeared to be missing in the back of her head. Heather Lee denied any involvement and said she was home all night cooking, while Tina Brown stated she was at Heather Lee's watching movies. I guess Tina watches a lot of damn movies. Brittany Miller, who was later interviewed, denied involvement as well. They were released after hours of questioning. On March 26, police seized Tina's red Honda SUV Illinois tags, parked at her residence. DNA from blood found on the passenger headrest matched that of Zimmerman's. Tina Brown's DNA matched DNA from a red stain on the handle of the stun gun, but Tina and Brittany Miller were excluded as contributors to DNA found on the other part of the handle, the part where the gun is gripped. DNA on the white shoes matched Brittany Miller. Audreana's DNA was on both ends of the crowbar. During the weeks leading up to Zimmerman's death, while she was in a medically induced coma, Brown spoke with several family members about the case and openly admitted to her actions. These family members would later on become witnesses at her trial. On March 10th, one day after her passing, probable cause warrants were issued for the murder on all 3 women. They were arrested without incident. During their interrogations, all 3 women could be heard going on about how much their friendship meant to them, how much Zimmerman meant to them, and how they would never hurt her. At trial, Mallory Azir, 15, testified she was 13 at the time of the crime and a friend of Brittany Miller's. Mallory said she, Heather, Tina, and Brittany were at Tina's trailer when Audreana knocked on the door that night. Audreana was looking for something to put on her tattoo to prevent infection and was in the house about 5 minutes when Tina started tasing her in the kitchen. Tina was screaming, quote, "Did you call Crime Stoppers on me?" Stuff like that. Heather was balling up a sock and Brittany was watching. Audreana fell to the ground, shaking, and they took her to the bathroom. She was screaming for help, so Brittany hit her in the face, and Heather put the sock in her mouth. They brought the car around to the back and then brought it back around to the front. Mallory thought Brittany was driving. Tina told Audreana if she screamed that she'd get tased again. Tina was holding Audreana's hands behind her back. They put her in the trunk and drove off. When they returned, Brittany said they had burned her. Brittany's hand was broken and she wasn't wearing any shoes. Brittany put her clothes in a bag and Heather cleaned off blood from her shoes and put them in a bag as well. Mallory and another neighbor, Jessica, went with Brittany to the hospital in Tina's car. On the way, they threw the clothes in a dumpster. At the hospital, they cleaned the blood in the car with hand sanitizer and soap. They wouldn't treat Brittany at the first hospital, so they went to another hospital and then returned to Tina's. Mallory said Tina was the most aggressive, but Tina, Heather, and Brittany were all in on it together in attacking Audreana. Before Audreana came over, Brittany told Mallory, "I have to tell you something," quote, "We're fixing to kill Audreana. Don't tell anyone or we'll kill you too." When Brittany said this, Heather and Tina were in the kitchen or bathroom, where Heather was showing Tina how to work the taser. Heather Lee testified she had been charged with first-degree murder and was facing the death penalty, but had pleaded to second-degree murder in exchange for her testimony. Heather said she and Audreana were close friends. Tina and Audreana were friends at first, but started having problems over Audreana's boyfriend. Heather went to Tina's that night around 9. Mallory, Tina, Audreana, and Brittany were all there when she arrived. Audreana, Tina, and Brittany were in the bathroom, and Mallory was at the counter with Heather. Audreana came out and showed Heather a tattoo. Brittany walked up to her, and then Tina walked up with the taser. Heather screamed, "Audreana!" and Tina started tasing her again. They struggled, and Audreana fell, shaking. Heather screamed, "Stop!" and Mallory and Brittany grabbed Heather to stop her from helping Audreana. Tina dragged Audreana into the bathroom. They heard a loud noise in the bathroom, and when Brittany asked what the noise was, Tina said she had to, quote, flip her, which Heather assumed meant knock her down. Tina asked for something to tie her up with, and Brittany got some rope or wire with cloth around it. Tina asked for something to put her in her mouth, and Mallory gave Tina a sock. They all came out of the bathroom and headed towards the back door. Audreana had a pillowcase over her head. Her hands were tied in the back, and she was crying. Tina, Mallory, and Brittany were all holding her. Heather ran out the front door and called for help, but no one came. Tina jumped in front of her, and Brittany came behind her, and Tina said she'd tase her and put her in the trunk if she had to. She'd also stated she'd go after her children. Heather got in the truck in the back seat. Brittany was in the front passenger, and Tina was driving. They drove Detroit to Ashland, removed the chains to the park, and drove into the area. Tina and Brittany got out. They got Heather out, and Tina opened the trunk. Audreana climbed out, and Tina removed the pillowcase and untied her. Audreana tried to run as fast as she could. Tina and Brittany ran after her. Audreana fell to the ground, and Tina and Brittany beat her with the crowbar and tased her. Brittany initially wielded the crowbar and Tina with the taser, and they at some point switched. A friend of Heather's had given Audreana the taser. Heather yelled at them to stop, "Let us go, and we won't say anything." Tina said, quote, "I can't let her go, because I'll go to jail, but I'll let you go," end quote. At one point, Tina yelled to Brittany to shut Heather up, and Brittany told Tina she didn't want to hurt Heather because she liked her. Audreana was still talking, and Tina yelled at Heather to get the gas can, which was in the trunk. When Heather hesitated, Tina said, "Do what I say or the same thing is happening to you." Heather reached for the can, but Tina came and snatched it. Tina poured gas on Audreana, lit a cloth with her lighter, and tossed the cloth on Audreana. Audreana was screaming, and Brittany was jumping up and down screaming, quote, "Burn, bitch, burn," end quote. Heather ran into the truck because it was dark. They got into the truck and went back to Tina's. Tina made Heather take her shoes off because they had blood on them. Tina and Brittany took off their bloody clothes and cleaned up. Brittany had hurt her hands, and Tina had told her to go to the hospital. Tina stayed with Heather to make sure that she didn't say anything to anyone. Heather went home, and Tina followed her. The police took them to the sheriff's office and talked to them separately. Heather lied to the police because she was scared. Sometime after that night, Heather saw Tina beating Brittany with a broomstick and saying she did it all for her. Before that night, Brittany had jumped on Audreana and was kicking her, and Heather stopped Brittany. Another time, Brittany tried to hit Audreana, and Audreana tried to tase Brittany. Heather told Tina about the latter incident, and Tina said she was trying to hurt her baby, and she was going to go get her. On cross-examination, Heather denied participating in the attack, denied putting a sock in Audreana's mouth, and denied knowing how to work the taser or showing Tina how to use it. She did not know where Mallory or Audreana were when she got out the front door, and Brittany and Tina came out after her. The friend who gave her the taser to Audreana was sleeping with Audreana and Brittany. Pamela Valley testified she met Tina in 1997 in Wisconsin. Pamela moved to Pensacola in February 2009, and Tina moved down that summer. Sometime after March 24, 2010, Tina asked Pam to come over and told her the police had taken her truck and raided her home. Tina admitted that they had beat up the lady who lived next door, put her in a car, took her down the road, and dumped her body. Someone set her on fire, and they didn't look back. Brittany broke her hand when she hit the lady in the face and had to go to the hospital. Tina told Brittany to clean out the car while she was at the hospital. Tina said she, Brittany, and Heather had done it. Pamela was not sure if Tina said she was the one who lit Audreana on fire, but agreed that she had said this in a previous statement. A few days after the conversation, Tina asked Pam to finish Audreana off at the hospital. "Are you fucking insane?" Tina also asked Pamela and Pamela's daughter to take a lie detector test for Tina and Brittany. The fucking audacity on this one. Pamela reported these conversations to the police. She also reported threatening messages and phone calls from Brittany to her daughter. During their first conversation, Tina was acting weird and couldn't stay still. Pamela had told police Tina was high the night of the incident. Eugene Hart, MD, performed the autopsy on Zimmerman. She was white and 19 years old. There was a laceration on her right scalp and 2 bruises on her right and temporal regions. There were burns on her torso, lower extremities, scalp, and upper back. The cause of death was multiple thermal injuries. So who are Tina Lasagna Brown, 39, born July 19, 1970, Heather Trini Lee, 27, born July 13, 1982, and Brittany Angelique Miller, 16, born June 2, 1993, and why did they commit this most horrendous crime? Willie Coleman and his first wife, Lillian, married at the age of 17. They had to get their parents' permission to marry. They had 2 children, Tina and Willie Jr., who were 11 months apart. While Willie and Lillian were hard workers, they also liked to party and spend weekends at nightclubs. The children got little attention from their parents. The extended family became aware that Tina and Willie were being left alone when Tina was 6 or 7 years old. Tina became a mother to her younger brother at a young age, making sure he was dressed, he was in the house when he should be, fed him as best as she could, bathed him, his homework was done, walked him to school, and picked him up. And sometimes she also made sure he did the right thing and so on. The extended family tried to fill in the gaps. Willie and Lillian did not spend time with their children. They preferred going out. They had not been married long when there was an explosion while he was cooking cocaine. He got burnt, was hospitalized, and had to have skin grafts on his face, neck, and hands. When Willie and Lillian divorced due to a physical altercation which left her bruised and cut, Lillian left the home and her children behind. Willie got custody of the children. Tina's father then began sexually abusing her. Tina initially told her court-appointed therapist, Dr. Bailey, that she had worked through the sexual abuse, but it was clear she had not, as she had become quite distressed, sick and even, when talking about it, to the point of reliving it. Even after letting that out, she went back to saying it didn't affect her. In court records, Dr. Bailey states Tina was not very introspective or aware of what was going on with her. The sexual abuse stopped when Melinda, who became Willie's second wife, moved into the house. Willie was a, quote, player and moved Melinda into the house before they were married, when Tina was between 9 and 11. Willie then married Melinda, known to be a heavy drug user and street worker. Willie changed after he remarried. He had always worked hard and dressed well, but after he married Melinda, he looked like a street person. He started asking for money, even small amounts like $5. He took a total turn backwards. While Willie drank and used drugs, mostly marijuana and cocaine, before he married Melinda, but not in the home. After he married Melinda, he and Melinda used drugs in the home and didn't hide it. Melinda was boisterous and used a lot of profanity. As she drank, she got louder, as well as argumentative and aggressive. She liked to go out. It was common knowledge that she used drugs. She didn't get along with anyone, especially when she started drinking, and especially not the children. Willie would sometimes drop the children off at a family member's home on a Friday and disappear until Sunday. Melinda was very verbally abusive. If he was high or had an attitude with someone, he took it out on them, mostly with his gun belt. Tina moved out after his father slapped her. When Melinda first moved in, Tina thought it was great. Melinda was fun, loud, and boisterous. There were no rules, and Melinda took Tina out partying. Then it became chaos, very violent and very damaging, and also very destructive. Melinda prostituted Tina. Melinda started Tina on crack. Melinda also put her out on the streets as a street worker. There was drug use going on in the home, and most of the people coming over to the house were also drug addicts. Tina moved around a lot between her father's, mother's, and her grandmother's. Tina attended 4 different schools in 4 years. She dropped out at the 11th grade, but returned and finished high school. Willie was violent to Melinda, and Tina was exposed to this. The more they were under the influence, the quicker the violence would start. Willie and Melinda moved 4 times. always living close to the projects of North Chicago, where there was gang activity and violence. Tina left when she was 15 or 16 because of the drugs and violence inside and outside the home, which was very tough on her and Willie Jr. Melinda was the only one who was important in Willie's life. His own kids no longer mattered. Alcohol was in Tina's home since the kids were small. Tina never got to be a kid. She was thrown into mother role at such a young age. As she got older, the only life she knew was drugs and fighting. By the time she moved in with her mother, she was already, quote, messed up. Willie was packaging, selling, and transporting cocaine as part of a drug cartel. He used his house as a crack house and went to prison for his role in selling crack and on gun charges. Tina was 20. After Tina left home, Tina was living in Waukegan, Illinois, in the projects, a very, very bad area. The man she was with had her out as a street worker as well. The home was known as a drug den, not only for those using crack, but heroin. When family were able to track her down, all they found was an empty house. Tina's first adult relationship from the age of 20 to 23 was with Craig Miller. She had all 3 children with him, though Brittany was born in a treatment center after they broke up. Tina got involved with Craig about the same time her father went to prison. In talking about it, Tina minimized the violence. She didn't lie or deny things. Quote, she just really doesn't get it. Asked if the relationship was violent, she said, no, not really. But police reports show this and her other relationships were violent and that she was scared and afraid and didn't fight back. Her and Craig's relationship was modeled on her father's relationship with Melinda. They got high, and when he would get mad, he would start beating on her. Tina had a number of jobs when she was younger: Burger King, Sears Surplus, bartending. She had periods of stable employment during sobriety. She went into treatment twice and had years of sobriety after each one. Her first child, Craig, was born cocaine positive, and DCF got involved. Deontay was born negative for drugs. After he was born, she went into Haymarket Substance Abuse Treatment Program in Chicago. Her 2 sons were adopted by her mother as part of the case plan when she went into treatment. Brittany was born while she was in the treatment center at Haymarket. After treatment, Tina was clean for about 4 years, and Brittany stayed with her. When she relapsed, Brittany went to live with Tina's father and then Tina's mother, and then Tina got her back before she went into the treatment program again. During the 4 years she was clean, Tina was married to Anthony Brown, whom she met through her brother Willie Jr., and who was also in a gang. Tina was taking care of Brittany and also helping Willie Jr. with his daughter. She and Anthony were only married for 4 months when Anthony went to prison for selling cocaine. Tina began bartending to pay the bills. While bartending, she met Stephen Ivory, who also dealt drugs, went to prison for dealing, and was physically abusive. After Ivory went to prison, Tina began stripping to pay the bills. She had some worthless check charges. The only other charges against Tina was a driving while license suspended. During this time, and relapsed to alcohol and cocaine. This was at age 26. This relapse lasted 9 years until age of 35, though there may have been brief periods of sobriety during the time. Tina became homeless, was spending every dime on crack, and was human trafficked into relationships to support her drug habits. At age 35, she had new worthless check charges and was sent to Prairie Center Treatment Center, where she stayed a year and a half. The family was excited when they learned that she had left and had been through rehab and was in Danville, holding down a full-time job as an assistant manager at California Catering, where she stayed for 4 years and became manager and attended school. Tina's 2 sons spent the summers with her there. Her family went to visit her and were proud of her. Her place was neat and in good environment for the boys. Her brother lived with her for about 8 months, and she had been a source of support for him throughout their lives. Tina worked long hours because the owner preferred working with her to anyone else and wrote articles praising her and her work ethic. She was in a relationship with Eric Turner, which her uncle Gerald described as a beautiful relationship. However, one night, Willie Jr., Eric, and Tina were sitting at the table when Eric's phone rang. When Tina answered it for him, it was Willie Jr.'s girlfriend, and that's how Willie Jr. and Tina found out that Willie's girlfriend was cheating on him with Tina's boyfriend. Willie said Tina immediately kicked Eric out, then relapsed, and in May 2009 wrote a worthless check from the business where she worked for. The relapse was short, and by June 2009, she was living with a friend and enrolled at University of Phoenix for online courses. She received grant money and moved to Pensacola, Florida, to live with a long-term friend, Pamela. She was clean, and she had a job at the Waffle House. In September, Pamela asked her and Brittany to move, as Pamela's mother was moving in. Tina ended up moving into the trailer park where she was living at the time the crime occurred, which is a very drug-infested, high-crime neighborhood. By Thanksgiving, she was using crack again. She entered into a marriage of convenience with a patron at the Waffle House. They weren't intimate and didn't live together, but the marriage helped him with family or paperwork or something, she said. He encouraged her to quit her job. Moving into that neighborhood without the structure of work was a real problem for her. She had been using crack again for about 4 to 5 months when the crime occurred, up to $200 to $300 worth a day of crack cocaine. Dr. Bailey testified that Tina was logical and rational. She was a poor historian at times, but not for a lack of effort. She was diagnosed in the jail with major depressive disorder and is on medication for that. Dr. Bailey diagnosed her with dependence on crack cocaine in remission in a controlled environment, i.e. the jail. Dr. Bailey saw nothing to indicate bipolar, mood disorders, or schizophrenia, although Tina had some psychotic features, hearing and seeing things related to depression. Tina does not understand that her childhood was not like her cousins or other children's childhoods. She also has no understanding of how her childhood experiences relate to her adult experiences. She has no understanding of how her childhood affected her. When first seen by the jail psychiatrist in June 2010, Tina was having nightmares and flashbacks going back to childhood, including when her father was sexually abusing her and her stepmother physically abused her, as well as more recent events. She cried frequently and was depressed every day. She was hearing conversations in her head. She had flashbacks and thoughts of killing herself. She was anxious and depressed with downcast eyes. The psychiatrist noted auditory and visual hallucinations at night, hearing prior conversations and seeing things fleetingly that were not there. She was placed on antipsychotic medication, antidepressant medication, and anti-anxiety medication. She responded well to the medication and was stabilized. In court proceedings, Deontay Miller, Tina's second son, stated the following. He lived in North Chicago with his grandmother, and he was in the U.S. Army Reserve. Deontay found out Tina was his mother when he was 15, around the time he started having visits with her. Before that, he thought his grandmother was his mother. He was happy when he learned that Tina was his mom. He lived in the same house with Brittany for a summer or so. Brittany also lived with their grandfather, which was, quote, pretty hostile environment. Brittany didn't like Melinda at all. They had arguments and physical fights. His grandfather drank, and Melinda drank and used drugs. Deontay's father, Greg Miller, lives in Indiana. He too has struggled with drug addiction. Describing his current relationship with his mother, Deontay said, quote, I love my mother. I still think of her as my sister. I don't think anything has changed. When he visited Tina in Danville, the visits were fun, relaxing, always kept a smile on their face. They were good times. His mom had been an outlet when he was down. She helped whenever he needed anything. He, quote, loves her. In court proceedings, Greg Miller, 21, Tina's older son, stated the following. He lives in Park City, Illinois, in the Chicago area, with his girlfriend of 6 years and 7-month-old son. He works at Sam's Club and goes to school. Greg was raised by his grandmother. As far as he could tell, his grandmother loves Tina. Greg did not have regular contact with Tina until early high school. Greg was raised with Brittany for a short period of time. Brittany also lived with Greg's father and grandfather. Greg used to visit Brittany often, as she was a 5-minute bike ride from Grandma's house. Brittany wasn't happy. They used to bike ride together, and the further they got from the house, the happier she became. She didn't want to be there and told stories about how she was treated, what she had to go do, and what she had been through. The drug use was still going on, and she was involved in it. She was 13 or 14 years old and involved with a grown man who was a drug dealer. Brittany was getting drugs from the guy for Willie and Melinda. She would come over to his grandma's house and ask if she could stay. When Greg visited Brittany at their grandfather's, she would totally be a different person. She was, quote, so out of it. It wasn't my sister there. It wasn't the girl I knew. The house wasn't well kept. You always had to walk around something. It was cold and uncomfortable. I personally didn't like staying there very long. It was worse when his grandfather and Melinda were there. It was like times two the feeling. It was not a nice place. Melinda was very verbally abusive to Brittany. Greg also witnessed physical abuse, fist fighting, shoving, etc. But mainly there were verbal abuse whenever they were in the same room over literally nothing. If Brittany missed cleaning the slightest corner, Melinda would curse and slander her. Melinda was very jealous of Brittany, who was a very beautiful girl, and did everything to beat her down. Melinda always had a drink in hand. It was drink, pour another cup, drink, pour another cup, and etc. Greg's father was also missing in his early life. He came back about the same time that his mother did, and Greg didn't accept him at first. His father had an addiction problem, but was clean. Asked to describe his relationship with his mother, since she became part of his life, Greg said she never really left his life. His grandmother had told him that she was not his birth mother. When he started visiting Tina regularly, he felt like she had been there the whole time for his whole life. She was more of a sister to him, but was a mother as well. His grandmother actually labeled her as a sister growing up. His mother was the closest person to him besides his grandmother, even when she was away. The visits to Danville were like Christmas. They went there with their grandmother at first, and then by themselves when they were old enough to ride the train alone. They went every chance they could, and any 2-day vacation, 3-day vacation, summers, quote, those days were days you remember forever. Greg stayed in touch with his mother by phone after she moved to Florida. They were planning to visit after she settled in a little more. Greg said he loved his mother as much as he always has, and that she would always be his mother, and he would always hold her with the most respect. Again, Tina reported she was using heavily that day. She had used $200 to $300 worth of crack cocaine. Her supplier was Heather's husband, Dante Lee, the neighborhood drug dealer. He had sex with women for drugs, and Tina had sex with him in exchange for the drugs. On that particular day, Heather was making deliveries for him. Heather used Tina's car to make the deliveries, and every time Heather used Tina's car, she gave Tina crack cocaine in return. Also, earlier that day, Tina had smoked crack with a man in the neighborhood in exchange for a food stamp card, which turned out to be empty. The trial proceedings. Heather Trini Lee became the first of the 3 killers to stand trial for the murder of Audreana Zimmerman. On November 3, 2011, Lee reached a plea agreement with the prosecution and pleaded guilty to a second-degree murder charge. As a condition of a plea bargain, Lee agreed to testify against her co-defendants, and in exchange for her testimony, the prosecution agreed to reduce the original charge of first-degree murder, drop the kidnapping charge, and the death penalty was ultimately taken off the table. On July 20, 2012, Lee was sentenced to 25 years in prison. She is inmate number P46705 at Gadsden Correctional Facility with a scheduled release date of August 13, 2031. Brittany was the third perpetrator to stand trial for the murder of Audreana Zimmerman. Miller pled guilty to the charge of first-degree murder, but as she was below 18 at the time of the offense, and as such, she would not face a death penalty, and the only possible sentence was life imprisonment. On May 7, 2013, Miller was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In March 2017, Brittany appealed to withdraw her guilty plea. She argued that she was a juvenile at the time of her trial, and hence she had not understood when she agreed to her plea that she would still be sentenced to life. Miller also stated that under the plea agreement, she was entitled to withdraw her plea of guilt if the U.S. Supreme Court decided that life in prison was in any way permissible for juveniles. At that time, the U.S. Supreme Court was deliberating and ultimately ruling that juveniles should not be required to serve mandatory life sentences without parole for offenses attracting such a punishment. However, the prosecution countered that based on the terms of her agreement, Miller could only withdraw her plea if the United States Supreme Court decision was not beneficial to Miller's case. The same month, Miller's bid to rescind her guilty plea was rejected by the courts. In October of 2017, Miller's resentencing trial began before a trial court in Florida. During the hearing, the defense presented psychiatric reports and other exhibits of evidence to show mitigating factors in favor of a sentence lower than life. It was adduced from the defense's evidence that Miller committed the crime out of a deep desire for her mother's approval, and that Miller was a victim of trauma caused by childhood abuse, abandonment, sexual exploitation, which were among the defense's points of submission for a lenient sentence. On November 6, 2017, Circuit Judge Gary Burgosh once again sentenced Miller to life imprisonment. In light of her juvenile status, Miller was allowed to have her first sentencing review in 15 years. On April 3, 2019, the Florida 1st District Court of Appeal affirmed the reinstatement of Miller's life sentence. She is inmate number P48041 at Lowell Annex. Tina LaSonia Brown was the second of the three perpetrators to stand trial for the murder of Audreana Zimmerman. Brown stood trial before an Escambia County jury on June 18, 2012. Closing arguments were made 3 days later on June 21, 2012. On June 21, 2012, the jury found 41-year-old Tina Brown guilty of first-degree murder. The jury reportedly deliberated the case for an hour before they returned their guilty verdict. A few days later, after Brown's conviction on June 26, 2012, the same jury returned with their verdict on sentence, unanimously recommending the death penalty for Brown, who reportedly apologized to the family of the victim in court. On September 28, 2012, Judge Gary Burgosh formally sentenced Brown to death after accepting the jury's death penalty recommendation. On May 15, 2014, the Florida Supreme Court dismissed Tina Brown's appeal against her death sentence and murder conviction. On July 8, 2014, a second appeal by Brown to the Florida Supreme Court was also rejected. On December 1, 2014, the U.S. Supreme Court rejected Brown's appeal. In 2018, Brown filed another appeal. She argued that her original trial counsel was ineffective and added that Lee had more culpability in the crime and some of the jurors should have been dismissed due to various alleged reasons they had for potential disqualification from jury selection. On April 5, 2019, Circuit Judge Gary L. Burgosh denied the appeal of Brown and stated that Brown did not provide supporting evidence to prove her claims or how they would have impacted the outcome of his trial. By 2023, Brown filed a post-conviction motion attempting to vacate her conviction and sentence. In the appeal, Brown's lawyers argued that a key witness against Brown, Corey Doyle, had lied on the witness stand at the behest of one of Brown's accomplices, Heather Lee, and her disputed credibility raised doubts over the validity of her death sentence. On May 10, 2024, Circuit Judge Gary Burgosh rejected Brown's appeal, ruling that the new evidence did not raise a reasonable doubt over the conviction of Brown. By early 2017, Tina Brown was one of 5 women held on death row at Lowell Correctional Institution in Florida. The other women were Amelia Carr, Ana Maria Cardona, Margaret Allen, and Tiffany Cole. In June of the same year, Carr's death sentence was commuted to life without parole following an evidential hearing over her case, and Cardona was similarly resentenced to life without parole in December 2017 after a third retrial for the murder she was formerly condemned for. By March 2023, only Brown, Allen, and Cole remained on death row after the commutation of Cardona and Carr's death sentences. Subsequently, in August 2023, Cole's death sentence was revoked and she was resentenced to life imprisonment without parole by the jury's majority decision of 10-2, leaving Allen and Brown the last 2 women under a death sentence in Florida. On December 13, 2024, Brown's only companion on death row, Margaret Allen, died of natural causes at the age of 58 while on death row. Allen's death made Brown the sole remaining woman on Florida's death row awaiting her execution. During Brown's original sentence, she addressed the court and stated the following: "I really want to speak to Audreana's family, but they are not here today, and I want to tell them that their daughter died a horrific death, and I was one of the ones who participated in taking her life. She didn't deserve it at all. I think back on the good times that we had, where we were laughing and dancing or doing little crazy stuff, and I remember back. I look at those autopsy pictures and they haunt me today, and I'm sorry that they wasn't able to have an open casket wake. Her family couldn't see her laying down peacefully. No more troubles. They don't see that. They couldn't. They weren't there. I'm just sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't help in this. I'm so sorry. As of 2025, she is inmate 155917 and still incarcerated on death row at the Lowell Correctional Institution. Unfucking believable. This episode was squeezed to perfection. First Few Squeezed is hosted and written by me, Sue Haley, and executive produced by Ebony. Still thirsty and need more? Visit us at fstcpodcast.com for links to all our social media handles, including YouTube. Want to keep the juice flowing? Make a donation by buying us a glass. And as always, cheers.